And I'd also say it always ends up working out, and I always tell myself that too, because it always does. And nothing's really a waste of time. Everything you do, I think you can learn something from where you're at. And not everyone has these beliefs, but I believe like God's put me right where I need to be, and it's purposeful even when you're not grinding away and working a ton.
Hello and welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast, where we talk about ideas for raising kids who become thriving adults, and we also talk about being thriving adults ourselves. I'm your host, Audrey Monkey. Here on the podcast, I share my experiences parenting 5 now adult kids and working with thousands more as a summer camp director for the past 4 decades. I'm the author of Happy Campers, and I love sharing encouragement and ideas for living more positive, connected lives. Topics I researched extensively for my master's in psychology and continue to explore today. I created this podcast as a place to share what I've learned and to encourage us all to raise and be thriving adults. Hey, Sunshine Parenting listeners. It's been a while, but I'm back. I've been thinking about a new series for a long time. And because my kids are now all between the ages of 20 and 30, and because of working with so many counselors at camp who are college age or right out of college, I've been really feeling lately like I want to share more ideas directly with them. So I'm here with my daughter, Charlotte, today. Welcome, Charlotte.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here.
So Charlotte is my middle child and actually is just about to turn 25. So she's right in the middle of this decade that we've coined the term in our family, the Tough Twenties. And we've kind of had the double meaning of Tough Twenties, meaning that it's a pretty challenging decade. You kind of have to like your prescribed life ends after high school or college, and suddenly you have to start actually figuring out what to do with your life. It's no longer this nice, clear path. And also it requires a lot of resilience. And I do think that the kids who are young adults in their 20s right now have gone through kind of a difficult the time period that they've grown up in between the advent of social media and smartphones and kind of the ubiquitous screens, coupled with the pandemic and just a lot of, I'm just going to say, I think you've grown up in a really challenging time. So I know most of my listeners are parents, but I know that many of you also have young adult kids or kids who will soon be young adults. And I've always had as my mission to help parents raise a generation of kids who become thriving adults. And now that my kids are adults, I definitely spend probably more time thinking about and talking directly to the kids. So anyway, this is just the kickoff of this series. I'm going to make sure to get each of my kids on at least once. And many of them have different kind of areas of expertise. My oldest daughter actually did a book club this summer with the counselors at camp about a book we all really like that's called The Defining Decade by Dr. Meg Jay. And so she has some good insights. She's nearing the end of her 20s. Because Gretchen will turn 30 in January. So, and then my youngest, Owen, actually just turned 20 last month. So I was like, this is, for whatever reason, I'm like, this is the decade that I want to talk about right now. I also think that many of the things that I have to share of what I've learned about just well-being and living a good life really pertain to this age. And I wish someone had talked to me about these things when I was younger, because I'm still discovering things all the time, and love learning just different ways that we can all figure out how to live this one precious life well. So to start with, just to kick off the series, I'm just going to talk to Charlotte and just ask her some questions and kind of get a feel for where she feels like she is in her like adulting and 20s, and some of the things that she thinks have gone well and that she's happy that she's done so far. And also just kind of looking ahead, what are things that she wants to do, you know, kind of to finish off the decade or strong or whatever, the second half of your decade. So to start with, Charlotte, why don't you just tell a brief history of like where you are, like, you know, what you did for college.
History of my 20s?
You know, just maybe, yeah, exactly.
I graduated high school in 2016, and I went to Emory in Atlanta, Georgia for a year. And then I decided that wasn't really working for me, so I transferred to Boulder after taking a gap semester where I went to Costa Rica. And
Wait, talk about for a minute, what did you do in Costa Rica?
I did an outward bound program, so I was outside for 90 days, disconnected, and we hiked from the Caribbean to the Pacific coast, and then we rafted and surfed.
And that was kind of a crazy thing, wasn't it? I mean, just, I don't know, we can't spend too much time on that, but that was, talk about requiring resilience. That was it was really hard, both physically, but also there was like weird, you were like trapped in some place for several days with like not really food.
Storm. We ate like cookies and pasta with ketchup for a week in a really small town. And I think one of the harder things, which I think about a lot, is I only had 3 outfits for 90 days. And I just felt really gross the whole time.
Yeah.
But you get kind of used to it, so it wasn't so bad. But I never take that for granted anymore, being comfortable. When I get in bed, I think about it almost every day. Just the time I was like on the rainforest floor in my disgusting clothes.
That actually, though, but that's also kind of a good point, is that often we don't remember what to be grateful for. Mm-hmm. You know, I feel that a lot.
It really changed my perspective on comfort.
Right.
Because I was uncomfortable physically a lot.
Right.
In that time.
Right. So just like, I'm just going to share a little bit of my perspective on this. So when Charlotte she had a pretty good year at Emory. She like made a lot of friends, was having a good time there. And it was only after she got home for summer, I think, that she was like, you know what? I think I want to be in a different environment. And that's when she really reminded herself how much she loves kind of the mountains and being in that sort of environment. And I just remember you called me. I was up at camp and it was staff training. And you called and said you were having a quarter life crisis, but it really should be like your
first
fifth.
Of many, honestly.
So we kind of joke because we go through, but
I'm in an endless state of quarter life crisis.
I think that's probably like
that's the 20s.
That's
why it's tough.
Yeah, but so I mean, it's not really. I think when we say the word crisis, people always talk about like your midlife crisis. It's not really a crisis. It's more like an awareness. It's like, wait a minute, I need to pivot, or something's like not quite right. And I mean, that is life, and it keeps happening where you're in a place and you're like, wait a minute, this isn't really working for me as much as I want it to be or whatever. But anyway, but when she did that, I was very much in favor of it. When she was applying to college, I had really encouraged Charlotte to focus on, of course, what I like to look at is the colleges where they said the people were happiest, like where the best, highest well-being. But Charlotte, like many kids, I think most kids, was in a school where there was a lot of emphasis on like getting into a school that has a low acceptance rate, or there was like this, you know, it was so ingrained, like we have to go to somewhere, you know, whatever, quote unquote, great school. So
small liberal arts colleges.
That's what they really
like
emphasize.
The mold that fit for everyone.
Exactly. So that was what they encouraged there. In any case, we supported her and like her decision and everything else, but also she didn't have any other friends from high school, and she had a lot of really close friends from high school. She didn't have anyone else going there, which was kind of a funny thing, because I know I'm definitely all about making new friends, but I kind of encourage you. I said, if you happen to be able to go with one of these pals to college, it's kind of nice to have, just start with that connection. Anyway, so getting back, you transferred, I said when she wanted to transfer, I said, great. I said, but I want you to take a little bit of a break in between. And maybe the break was a bit of torture because it was that uncomfortable semester.
It was really fun though. But I'm definitely glad I did.
Yeah. It was
I think
memorable.
I was just worried about getting off course.
Yeah.
Which is, everyone's always worried about that. And that's still what I worry about all the time. That you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. like all my friends would graduate before me. When like looking back, I should have just taken a gap year originally, probably, because I'm young for my grade.
I think someone might have suggested that, but oh well.
I know. Well, where is this podcast when I need it?
Oh shoot. Okay. Well, maybe it'll help someone else. Okay. Yes, you were young when you graduated. You were 17. 17.
And I wanted to run, I thought, in college, which you can't take a gap year and then play college sport a lot of the time.
Correct. That's right. That was another factor, was that you were on the cross country team at Emory, which was another fun thing to be on a college sports team. Is pretty cool. So, anyway, so you get to Boulder, like kind of go on from there.
I got to Boulder. I wasn't able to join a sorority because I had joined one at Emory so briefly. So that was kind of the easy way, I thought, to make friends. So it was a little bit harder, but one of my other good friends from high school transferred to Boulder at the same time, and then one of my good Emory friends transferred to Boulder. So then I had a little group going, met a lot of people that love the outdoors and did a lot of cool activities that went beyond drinking and partying, rafting and camping and all that fun stuff.
Skiing, you did a lot of skiing on the ski.
A lot of skiing. Yeah. And then I wrapped up my time at Boulder. COVID hit during my quote-unquote senior year, but I still had a semester because I was behind. So I worked at the city club, the Boulder City Club, part-time, and then finished up classes and during COVID, where school is online. And then I graduated. Didn't know what I was doing. I thought I'd move to Denver because that's what everyone else was doing at Boulder. But I really wanted to change, and I had some friends in San Diego. So I ended up going home for a little, panicking a lot about what I was going to do next, knowing I would move to San Diego, but career-wise.
Wait, let's hold up there for a second, because I just want to say, I think from talking to many people your age and also the parents, a lot of kids graduate from college and don't have like a job lined up for starting the next week or something. A lot of kids are graduating from college, especially during this COVID time, and having to kind of regroup and figure out, where am I going to live? What am I going to do? And so I know many kids who it's taken kind of a while for them to land kind of their first, whatever you want to call it, real-ish career type job or something. So I don't think that's unusual. But I think that, and I'm going to just also say that I don't think it's unusual to feel a lot of anxiety and kind of panic during that time. Because again, you're so used to being on like, what are my next classes I sign up for? What's the next thing I'm going to do? And when you're suddenly just, it's like you've been let off the tether that doesn't tether you to anything anymore.
Yeah. And you just feel purposeless when you're not working, which I don't think is a good message either.
No.
Because, I think everyone has purpose without doing anything, even if we were just
being. True.
But I have to always remind myself of that.
We all do. Mm-hmm. We all do. It's like the human being versus human doing kind of thing. We all kind of, a lot of times, and I know I'm guilty of this too, it's like equate our worth with what we've done, as opposed to just who we are, right. That we're just fine as we are. Mm-hmm. So you did, though, like you said, you decided on a place that you wanted to live, and you also, your degree was in marketing, and so media
studies and business.
Okay. Yeah. And so you knew you wanted to try to use that in some way.
Mm-hmm. I love the creative side of things and writing, anything that's like visual. So I thought it would be something more creative and like writing based. But wasn't really sure at all. I had no idea what kind of career I was going for.
Okay, but also, so while we'll go into what job you got in San Diego, but before that, I think there was a couple of things that you did that were pretty cool and I think are kind of helpful when you think about if you're in one of those times where you're not exactly sure what you're doing or you're kind of in between. You ended up getting an interesting certification during that time. So just talk about that and how that kind of is something that still is something that you kind of have benefited from.
Yeah, I got my holistic health certificate through the Institute of Integrative Nutrition during that gap, and a little bit while I was working I had to finish that. But I've always loved food and cooking and anything health and fitness related, especially being a former athlete. So that was really cool to learn about, and definitely things I still utilize every day in my own life and might want to use in a future career. I also had some little internships during college that were food related. I worked for a collagen company, and then I also worked for a kombucha company. So I had some food things, and I always knew that was kind of an interest. I just didn't put the pieces together, but that's kind of, it all is kind of related to my first job that I got.
And also, do you know the interesting thing about something like learning about nutrition or fitness, it's like you don't even have to use it for a job and it still helps you in your life. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like there's so many things that for your family or for your friends, like you can help other people because of that knowledge that you have now. And I know your friend Grace, who you live with now, she mentioned to me some tips that she's learned from you. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of times we think that,
it's not purposeful if there's no money in it.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. But it is purposeful, even if you didn't end up using it as necessarily. So it was worthwhile. But I think that was good. And did that help you feel a little less panicked when you were doing that, or no?
I think yes, because I knew it could be a career option if I needed to, that I could be a health coach for people. And I still have that in my
repertoire.
Yeah, in my repertoire. Just, it is, I guess, like a little, makes me feel better knowing I have that option. And it's something I really like learning about.
Also, simultaneously, I don't know when you started it, but your Instagram, Shar Eats.
Oh, yeah.
When did you start that? Was that during college?
That was during college, during COVID.
Okay.
I think when I had some downtime.
Lots of downtime.
Yeah, just food Instagram, kind of combining my love of food and health stuff and content creation, photography, and all those things.
Which obviously you enjoy and you're good at, which one of our episodes is going to be about something that I've done with the counselors at camp, which is like finding ways to find where they intersect, what you're good at, what you enjoy doing, and what you can get paid to do. There's like an intersection sometimes of those things. Yeah. That's kind of a sweet spot. And it usually takes people a lot past their 20s to get there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because you have to,
quite there.
No, you have to kind of work your way. But
quite far.
But learning about what you like and what you're good at is really important, right? During this time too. So anyway, you did end up finding a job. And so now let's talk about what you've been doing up until pretty recently, when you were in San Diego.
I found a job at a PR firm in San Diego that focused a lot on restaurants. I mean, I knew what PR was, but not really. I kind of worked my way into the job from an interview perspective. I had no prior PR experience, which it said I needed on the application. But I was like, this feels perfect. I'm just going to really try. And so I wrote a persuasive email and just tried to shoot my shot. And it worked.
Time out for just a second. Did you know there's a statistic that women tend to not apply for jobs unless they feel like they have all of the qualifications?
And men don't.
Whereas men...
It's one of the reasons they get ahead.
Yeah. Because they'll apply if they have like half of the qualifications and just like what you did. So kudos to you for that, because I think part of life is every job, everyone always says we want 5 years of experience. And it's like,
but it's entry level.
How do you get 5 years of experience? Anyway, so good tip for those people who are in that position. It doesn't hurt to try. It doesn't hurt to apply and to, again, use what you do know and in an interview or in your persuasive email or whatever way you're contacting them, just to reach out, even if you just ask, I'd love to have a conversation with you about the work you're doing or something like that. So it's just, it doesn't hurt.
And I felt really qualified, even though I wasn't technically. So I think that helped a lot because I was really confident in my interview because I knew that I'd be good at it.
Yes. And as it turns out, you were really good at it.
Yes.
And I would say, was it mostly that you were recognized for, from what I heard, was your writing skills and your productivity, like getting things done. Like when they assigned you something, you didn't require like a lot of scaffolding. You could just get things done.
Yeah.
Which I will say as an employer, those are really important skills that the part about being kind of a self-starter and getting things done has been from my perspective, the young adults that we've worked with, the ones that really stand out as being especially good at their work are the ones who learn, listen, ask good questions, but also don't require like hand holding and like along the way someone to say, oh, now next you do this, next you do this. You want people to ask, but you want people to be able to kind of do their own work. And that is, it's hard as an employer when you have to do.
In our house, you want us to notice what needs to be done.
Oh yes, I did do that.
Instead of being told.
Yes.
You always say that.
Yes. Which, and I think part of the reason for that is I wanted you to grow into the kind of people that when you are an employee,
Or at your friend's house.
Or at a friend's house, you're not an annoying person who needs to be told every single thing. So yeah, that is a good point. And I think also part of that, so again, goes back to parenting a little bit is, and in my book I wrote about this too, is one of the ways that I tried to do that was if like kids were cleaning the kitchen, to teach them to ask the question, is there anything else you'd like me to do? Because I think as an employee, if you're doing a project or something, asking, hey, is there any way I can make this better? Or is there anything more I can do? Yeah. That is, as an employer, when someone asks that, you're like so impressed because
more than the bare minimum.
Asking for feedback, open to learning, and not waiting for you to come and say, actually, you need to capitalize the first letter of each of these sentences or whatever it is, in an email or something like that. So anyway, so PR.
So I was working at that PR firm for a year and 8 months, and it was all females, pretty small. And I was ready for a change. I thought I wanted to be at a bigger PR firm where things were more organized and more systematic and maybe a little more corporate. It was really casual to the extent that they knew everything about me and vice versa. I knew everything about my bosses. And I just needed to change. So I applied for a job at a really big and successful PR firm based out of LA. And I was working remote for that firm, doing PR for hotels, for luxury hotels for 5 or 6 months. And then I realized after working at 2 places that it really wasn't an issue with the first PR firm. It was more of an issue that I wasn't enjoying the career. I was super stressed all day. I was super disconnected from my coworkers, working at home. And yeah, it was just really anxiety inducing, and I didn't want to. I saw the people above me in the career, and that was not something I was aspiring to be. It was just more work as you got older, more stress, more responsibility, and a lot of them didn't have families. That wasn't a priority for them, and that's something I definitely want down the line. I don't want to be working for 12 hours and have to be available on weekends and at night and 24/7. At the beck and call of journalists and influencers. So that's...
this was your second quarter life crisis?
Maybe my 5th. I don't know.
Okay, well, we should think of a different name for it.
Yeah.
But
new crisis. I knew I needed to pivot. I knew I needed to quit my job, but I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I felt like I was back at square one, and I still kind of am. This was only a few months ago. But I did quit my job, and then...
Well, okay, I think part of this, though, is I definitely, I'm always wanting to think about
grit.
Being a thriving person. No, I think thriving person. I think that it's good to have grit and resilience and stick with things. And it's also good to have the wisdom to know when you've been doing something for a couple of years to be able to step back and say, is this a path that I want to stay on? I do think, honestly, it was a really good experience. You did learn some skills. You really experienced that culture, that work culture. You had to meet a lot of deadlines. You did a lot of professional work during that time and interacting with clients. And so I think that nothing was lost from the experience. But I think also you did kind of determine that something that I think a lot of adults often learn later is you can get, unfortunately, on this sort of like hamster wheel where you get a little bit stuck where you're making more money to live in a nice place to like but then you have to kind of keep up with the job and the financial thing in order to live where you live. Mm-hmm. So even if you like where you're living, sometimes maybe the job isn't, and it's not a right match, you're kind of stuck there. Mm-hmm. And I think something I've been hearing a lot about lately, and I've told you about, is I don't think we do enough, what did I call it? Life-centric career planning. I think that's what the term that Cal Newport uses, and I'll link to where I heard about this. But we don't do enough of like thinking about where do we want to live? Like what's the environment and the place, and what kind of work do we want to do? Like
what do we need to be able to afford?
What do we need to be able to afford in order to, that too. But like for me, when I was in college, I really, besides teaching, which I knew I liked working with kids, and that was something that I always kind of thought I'd want to do, I really didn't have any vision other than I knew I didn't want to have to wear like a suit, because back then every job required you to wear like a suit and like heels and go to these interviews in the career center. And I just remember knowing that I didn't want to sit at a desk and have that kind of job. That's all I knew. And this was before computers or being stuck to a thing. But I just knew after working at camp and being with people that I liked people-centered jobs where I'm interacting with people and not...
I think I thought that I wanted that.
You wanted what?
To, like, slay the corporate world. To do, like, really well corporately and make a lot of money and wear heels, you know? Like, I thought that would be fun. And that's what people had told me. That's what we were going for.
Right.
You know, like, that was the message I was fed in high school and college. Like, how can you make the most money? How can you, like, use what you can, like, the connections and stuff you have to make the most money? And
yeah. Well, and there's like good reason. A lot of people paying back student loans and everything. There's a lot of reason to need to like make money, and money does bring like the ability to go on trips and do all kinds of stuff. So yes, there's this balance though. It's the dilemma, and it's that balance, and it's that lifelong choices that you make about where you live and what you prioritize your spending on, and how much do you really need to make to live your best life. I mean, some people choose their best life is like living in an RV and traveling around or backpacking. You know what I mean? There's like, there's this extremes of living.
It's hard because you're trying to plan for the future too.
Yes.
Because that might be the best right now, living in a van.
Right.
But what about later?
True. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so we need to wrap this up because we'll have to do another one, I think, too. But what I want to say now is you're actually back in the mountains. You're in Idaho, and fortuitously have a place to live where you can live for a while that's nice and rent-free as you discover your next step. However, I thought one thing that was quite interesting to me is this was going to be like a little bit of a kind of a break and to kind of regain your health and sort of just kind of recalibrate after a really stressful time for a couple of years that I think did lead to some health problems for you. We can talk about that in another episode. But interestingly enough, you get here, and within a couple weeks, what do you find yourself doing up here?
I find myself working part-time at a preschool, which is so much fun. It kind of fell into my lap, and I knew I was meant to be doing it. And the days fly by for me. It's not stressful, and I just feel really joyful working at the school. And I also just feel so much healthier, like being on my feet and not glued to my computer and interacting with people. A lot of them are very small people.
So cute.
The cutest. But it just feels correct for right now. And I also have some free time too. It's not full time. So I can have time to just be, honestly, work out and cook and eat and do the things that I love to do that aren't work related. So it's not a permanent solution, but it's definitely a nice reset.
Well, so life is never a permanent solution. Whatever we're doing is always temporary. I hate to tell you, but you go through these phases. But you are still also doing some of your creative stuff. You've kind of re-upped a little bit of Shar Eats.
Yeah,
you've done a little bit of that.
Social media on the side and maybe looking to do more of that. That's maybe the next move.
Yeah. So now I would just like you to share, if you're talking to someone who's 20 and sort of in that about maybe, a couple of years going to be graduating. They're 20, 22, 23, whatever. They're finishing college and they're in that mode. What advice would you give someone who's just a few years behind you about what would you recommend that they do?
I think really think about what you measure success in, and is that for sure money? Because a lot of people it is, and that's good. Like we talked about, can afford a lot of fun things in life. But for me, for example, I really value my health and feeling good, and like having low cortisol and low stress is really like of value to me, maybe more than being super rich. And that's something I'm like keeping in mind when I'm choosing a career path. I'd rather make less money and feel healthy and have time to go on vacations and hang out with friends than be making six figures and super miserable all the time. And I'd also say it always ends up working out, and I always tell myself that too, because it always does. And nothing's really a waste of time. Everything you do, I think you can learn something from where you're at. And not everyone has these beliefs, but I believe like God's put me right where I need to be, and it's purposeful even when you're not grinding away and working a ton.
I think another nugget that when you were talking about working at the preschool and you said like how the days fly by and you feel joyful, I think the other thing that's kind of important during this phase of your life when you're kind of starting out your career and trying to figure out where you land is to think about, I love the analogy of like a highway. Like when people talk about what's your path in life or whatever, you kind of like veer around, and you try these different things, and each thing you do, you draw something from it like, oh, I enjoyed like that part. So like when you look at your PR job, what were the pieces of it that you enjoyed most?
Probably like the creative side, the writing, and then just any like interaction that I was having.
Yeah, so like
if the clients were enjoyable, client meetings were fun.
Right. So it was like the people part of it or whatever. And so you also now, you also enjoy little people and working with them.
Love the little people.
Love the little people. So I think that part of what I'm just learning from observing you is seeing that you're trying like different things, and you're also at the same time you are developing some craft and skill in some different areas, which eventually some or all of them might end up being used and they may not, but you're learning a lot about yourself. And I do think during this decade, it is like, it's not too late to switch if you're, if you've been studying something and doing something for a long time and you think, oh gosh, I have to do this. I think it is good to give it a good try. And I mean a good try, like a couple of years, not just like a month, because probably the first month of anything is pretty hard and terrible. But then also just as you try different things, keep taking away from those. What is it about that I enjoyed most?
And what you didn't enjoy is what you always tell me.
Yeah.
Like, what are the things you really don't want to be doing after coming out of PR?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it was funny because when I was your age, all I knew is what I didn't want to do.
Mm-hmm. That sometimes is more clear.
I mean, that's probably not that, but I just was like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But I think you do these clues, and I do think the work that you do, it's not going to ever all be all fun, all joy all the time. But there needs to be at least a little bit, like something that sparks you, and that some days that go fast because you're engaged and learning.
For me, like, it's important that I feel like my work is meaningful.
Yes.
And I wasn't feeling that way. And I do feel like that even more at the preschool. Even though it's like silly, I feel like it's a little purposeful. Like they're growing into... I remember my preschool years, and I always think about that. When I'm like with these kids, like they'll remember these weird field trips and activities and stuff. So
it's the most important work. I mean, I've always said that. Of course, I love
kids.
Yeah. Well, and working with them, teaching. I mean, like teachers and people, anyone who works with and loves on kids they're the heroes of the world for sure. So, well, Charlotte, we will definitely have some follow-up episodes because I really want to delve more into, I've learned a lot of health tips from you. I want you to share those with listeners, and we'll have some more conversations as this series goes on. So thank you so much for being on today. I enjoyed our conversation, and I know people will learn a lot from you.
Thank you for having me. It was a great time.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. As always, you can find notes and links about this episode on my website at sunshine-parenting.com. If you enjoyed the episode, I'd appreciate you passing it along to a friend or giving Sunshine Parenting a rating and review on iTunes. If you enjoy listening to my voice talking to you, my book, Happy Campers, 9 Summer Camp Secrets for Raising Kids Who Become Thriving Adults, is now available on Audible. Thanks for listening and have a great rest of your day. Here's to raising a generation of thriving adults and being a generation of thriving adults.